It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to the 6th annual Prime Branding Panel. This is a highlight of the fall, and I am so happy that we have a wonderful list of panelists here to answer branding related issues. I am very grateful to the president of Prime, Toby Lazier, and Helena, who is with AdPR Association, and I'm going to mess that up. I apologize. I'm also very grateful to Jennifer Coupland for her leadership as the advisor for Penn State Prime. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Toby and Helena, and I just wanted to say welcome. Have a wonderful time.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Meg. And you basically covered the same things that I would. I just wanted to say a lot of thank yous to everyone. I know this is one of my favorite events that we do every year, and I think a lot of people share the same sentiment. I am so grateful for all of the hard work that goes into this every year. I wanted to thank my exec board, Shannon, Megan, Julia, Haley, and Elena, all of the hard work that you all put into this. Again, obviously Professor Coupland, Timmy, it's been so fantastic to work on this another year with you. And I wanted to give a big shout out to Julia Lowen. She is the professional development director of Prime, and she has pulled so much of the weight in putting this event together, and this absolutely cannot have been done without her. So thank you to our panelists. Thank you to everyone for coming today. And I am so excited to hear all of the insights that will be shared, and I'm looking forward to getting some time in the breakout rooms as well, following the panel, to ask as many questions with the panelists as well. And I will pass it off to Helena so that she can talk a little bit about AdPR too.
Hi everyone, I'm the current president of AdPR Club. I'm super excited to be here. Just echoing everything Toby said, this is going to be a great event tonight. And I'm super excited. Hello to all Prime members, AdPR members. And I look forward to collaborating again with Prime, possibly in the spring or later this semester. So yeah, I'm excited to get started.
Okay, so I think I'll take over. And my name is Timmy Gard. I'm going to be the moderator tonight. And I thank everybody for coming to our 6th annual branding panel, Forging a Career in Branding. And I just wanted to, again, express my thanks to Prime and the AdPR Club, and Toby and Haley and Julia and Shannon and Elena and Megan and Helena, and more importantly to the sponsors, Jen and Meg, and also the Aaron, who's helped out tremendously, because without all of you, we both gotten here, and working really closely with the Prime Group, it's really been outstanding. And, you know, as we know in business, commitment and passion have just truly have shown out. So thank you very much. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to have an hour of some questions. We're going to introduce the 6 panelists. We're going to have a series of questions. They're going to answer. A lot of the questions came from the students. We have close to 200 students tonight. Some of the panelists also sent me some ideas. So we're going to have a nice interactive discussion on the whole topic of branding and some marketing and some other issues, but it'll all be related. So with that, I would like to introduce the panelists who have given us their time tonight. So let's go through that if we can. Adam.
Hi, Timmy. Thanks for having me on tonight. Timmy, would you like me to go through the slide, the intro slide? Oh, okay, great. There it is. Yeah. So hi to everybody. I think I'll start by saying congrats on the big victory Saturday night. I was watching as a proud alum from my couch, screaming at the TV, trying to not wake up my 3-year-old. But my name's Adam Klosky, and I'm Penn State class of 2009. I was in SMEAL as a marketing major, and I'm currently the director of marketing at Red Bull in the Mid-Atlantic region, based here in Philadelphia. Something kind of cool and unique, I think, with my career is I started with Red Bull actually as a student when I was at Penn State. I was actually down at the mall with some friends. I saw some Red Bull employees, said, hey, let's go talk to them and get a can of Red Bull. And that decision pretty much changed the course of my life, because I ended up linking up with their boss and got an opportunity. So pretty cool way that I've kind of had my career from being at Penn State and the university kind of giving that to me in a way. When I was a student, I was a part of PSMA. It's not a typo. Before it was PSAMA, it was PSMA. So I was a member, an active member of that. Prime the ad club that didn't exist then, but I probably would have been a member of that if that was there as well back then. I did go back to school to Carnegie Mellon. I got my MBA a couple of years ago, so I'm kind of a lifelong continued learner. And yeah, I'm just excited to be here tonight.
Thank you. Terrific. James?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so one, excited to be here and chat with everybody today. James Cuthbert, class of '03 for undergraduate. Was in the Smeel College for my undergraduate. My claim to fame at Penn State is I hosted a hip hop night as a DJ at Cafe 210 on Tuesdays, and it was rather popular at that time if anybody was nearby. But you know, to be honest, that was what kind of like spurred my entrepreneurial spirit and allowed me to see, man, you can actually do something within a career with something you're passionate about, like hip hop. So fast forward in my career, I've had an opportunity to work at places like General Mills and Kellogg's. You know, not necessarily hip hop just yet, but then the Coca-Cola, working on Sprite and doing some cool programs around music. So I started to blend my passion together with kind of what I learned at Penn State and beyond. And then worked with Adam at Red Bull for some time. And then, you know, was at BET for some time at Viacom CBS, and all the different marketing capacities. And currently I'm the president of Rock the Bells, which is a modern media company, which aims to elevate classic hip hop through a modern lens. So that's my role right now. My boss is LL Cool J, which is pretty cool.
Thank you. Angelo Fields.
James, I'm just putting two and two together, man. I think I remember those hip hop nights. Well, maybe I don't remember them, but I remember they existed. Angelo Fields, class of '04 undergrad, maybe a little bit more unique. I'm more of a career switcher. So graduated Eberly College of Science with chemistry, and then worked for Anheuser-Busch for a number of years on more of the technical side, making beer. And then saw what a great marketing organization looked like at AB and really wanted to make that transition. So did full-time MBA at Penn State, graduated in 2013. Spent about 7 years with Nestle on various brands like Hot Pockets and Stouffer's. And then most recently making a transition over to the Goodyear company. I'm working on a fledgling brand there called Roll by Goodyear. So it's mobile tire installation, sort of the next gen of a very like old company. So, and then I'm so glad Adam called out Penn State football. I still am a dyed-in-the-wool Penn Stater. Junior and senior year, I didn't miss a home or away game. So like 25 straight, we were absolutely nuts. I don't think we saw a lot of away wins back then, but dyed-in-the-wool Penn Stater. And then favorite place downtown was the Skeller. It's like Doggy's Pub now, but it's a shame Skeller had to go away. But if it had to go away to something, I'm glad it's a pub that supports dogs coming in and hang out. So appreciate being here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Gallagher. I realize my name says Kelly Jackson. I recently got married and I am in the process of changing my name, so not to confuse you guys, but I'm Kelly Gallagher. I graduated from the College of Com, not Spiel, in 2014 with a focus on advertising and public relations, but it's been such an honor to work with Jennifer and get to know people in Spiel, just because I necessarily didn't have that opportunity. And I feel like now all of you have such a great opportunity to be involved in programs that really sync up both colleges. Like Adam, I am also a lifelong learner. I am currently getting my master's at Northwestern University here in Chicago, where I'm based. So I'm about halfway through. I recommend the program to anybody who is very interested in integrated marketing. I think of it as half MBA, half communication. So really great program. Happy to talk to anyone about that. Professionally, immediately after graduating, I went to Philadelphia and I was working at a small advertising shop there. And then I made the move out to Chicago, where I am now, working at some big name agencies like Havas and Ogilvy, whereas most recently, and I actually just took a new job too at Ulta Beauty, based here in Chicago, as a PR manager. So I've spent the last 8 years in agency land. I can talk to you a little bit about Ulta Beauty, but only being day 3, my knowledge is a little limited, but happy to talk to you guys about the transition from agency to in-house.
Terrific. Thanks, Kelly. Michelle. Did we lose Michelle?
Maybe on mute.
There we go. Honestly, today Zoom is not my friend. Every once in a while, I'm sure you're all spending time on Zoom, so I apologize for that. I'm Michelle Harmon Matson. I am the Chief Marketing Officer of AccuWeather. I will say that my career in marketing has been varied. And what I mean by that is I literally have been in media and entertainment, sports, e-commerce, and now of course with weather. So I've worked with many brands that you all may be familiar with. So everything from American Idol and So You Think You Can Dance to Procter & Gamble and Fresh Direct e-commerce grocer based in New York. So a variety of different venues. So the one thing I certainly would love to leave you all tonight is that when you think about marketing, think really big and broad, because I don't know of a company that exists today that doesn't need marketing, and that's on the B2B or the B2B side. So think creatively when you're starting your career and going out into the marketplace. Now, turn it over to you.
That takes care of one of my questions. Thanks, Maureen. Thanks, Michelle. That's great. And now, Maureen.
All right. Hopefully I'm off mute and good to go, but I think I'm the last one to go. So nice to see everyone tonight. And I hope everyone's having a good first start of the semester. So I'm Maureen Seitz. I am in the pharma industry. So that I've been kind of born and bred there since graduating from SMEAL in 2015. I started my career with GSK, which is a bigger pharma company. Usually people are pretty familiar with. I started in a rotational program there. So rotated through a number of different functions, spent time out in the field in sales, spent time in HR, marketing ops, you name it. But my passion was always in marketing. So I'm excited to have finally made the transition there. And I recently left GSK actually for a smaller pharma company called UCB. I started with them in March. So I'm happy to chat with anyone about, making a transition to a new company at some point. I'm sure that will happen in your careers, and, also the difference between sales and marketing and what those kind of roles look like. And then some other things on my profile. I also, like many of our other panelists here, am a lifelong learner and am always pursuing new things in that arena. And I'm almost done with my MBA. I am about 3.5 classes away. So very excited. I'm pursuing that at Penn State, and it's been all virtual. So very exciting during the pandemic to go through that, like everyone else here on the line who's a student. And I guess for my fun fact, I am from a really big family and one of 7 kids, and 5 out of 7 kids attended Penn State. So like many here, Penn State obsessed and love it. And I got the chance to attend Penn State with a couple of my siblings, which was awesome. So that's a little bit about me, but looking forward to the discussion.
Super. Okay, we're right on time. So we're ready to roll. So, every year I try and start off with a question that's kind of relative or something that somebody has told me it's resonated in aha. And James, you're that person. You shouldn't be surprised because we kind of had a good discussion and you kind of told me a couple of things that get you motivated. And that's about brands, culture, and cause. So my question to you is, how do you intersect brands with culture and cause?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think I'll go backwards a little bit before I go forwards. So I like to tell stories, which all marketers do, because everything is a story, data is a story, etc. So, I actually went through this time period when I was selling CPG food products at General Mills and then Kellogg's, where I was trying to figure out how do I infuse kind of like what motivates me in my life, my passions, with kind of what I do in my career in marketing. I'd always, so I sat down, I'm really thinking about like, what is it that really makes me tick? And I came over this across this thing called Akaji, which is this philosophy of, this island, somewhere far away. I've got forget the actual the location, but they have this theory that if you want to figure out who you are, there's 3 questions you can ask. There's like, what do you have, 10,000 hours of experience in? What do you love, and what are your God-given talents? So I went through this long process of trying to figure that out, but then I decided to take a cheat code and just ask my wife, because she's good at telling me exactly who I am. She was like, well, it's easy. It's like, you love brand strategy, you love community advocacy, and you love hip hop. I was like, man, so brands, culture, cause kind of became my filters. And once I hit my filters on, I'm like, now I started looking for opportunities that fit me. So when I took a job at Coca-Cola on Sprite brand, it was running music marketing. And there I was able to put my whole self into my job. And then I went to Red Bull, and it kind of like got to intersect culture. So like, doing a campaign and making sure it's hyper relevant for people who live and breathe those cultural passion points every day. And then always finding a community advocacy lane that you can kind of pile in. So like I do that today with Rock the Bells. I live and I get to live and breathe, hip hop culture. I get to do marketing, but I also get to find ways to give back to communities like the Universal Hip Hop Museum, which will open up in the 50th anniversary of hip hop, which is 2023. But that's really where that comes from. It's more about like, who am I, and answering those questions and getting filters, and then using those filters to guide my career.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I think too, if I could, Timmy, if I could elaborate on that, I think of two examples specifically with my work that I do at Red Bull of, you said how brands and culture and causes can intersect. I think first of all, brands have identities. Brands are just like people or athletes or celebrities. Brands have an identity. They should have an identity. And with that identity, it kind of creates a personality of that brand. And for us at Red Bull, we're obviously known for extreme sports, for pushing the limits, giving people wings. And with that, you could imagine that we push the boundaries, our athletes, our participants push the boundaries, and at times there could be injury, right? We actually, our cause of choice is called Wings for Life, and it is the largest spinal cord research charity in the world. So because our brand has this identity of pushing the boundaries and giving people wings and putting these athletes and these participants in these situations, we're already working on that in the future. So I think that's one way that you could look at a cause and a brand and identity, and it can flow together. And another way, like James was just saying, you get into culture marketing and different communities. Just on Monday, I'm really proud of this cool thing that my team did. Matisse Thybulle is a Philadelphia 76er basketball player, and he's one of our athletes. And he Philly guy, Timmy, yeah. So Matisse loves photography. That's his off-court passion. So when we signed him, we had a big conversation. We're known as a media company because we have a big media arm, and he was really interested in that. So we took something that he used to do in college, which were photo walks, and we essentially did a photo walk through Philadelphia on Monday with about 80 photographers. And we gave him the tools to give back to his community of photographers in Philadelphia. And then we'll create a gallery to celebrate that at the end. So not a charity cause, more of a community connection with like the identity of him as an athlete and how he connects to our brand.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, this is for you. Under our current, what I'm calling the next normal, not the new normal, tell me, what are some of the ways that the onslaught of social media has changed the way we are developing and communicating our brands?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a great question. And I think especially in the world of earned and PR, social is now like a new and probably, I would argue, a priority channel for storytelling. So I think I'm going to talk about crisis because naturally that's like in the world of PR, but from a crisis perspective, I think brands now, they have to be looking at social 24/7. You have to understand who's talking about your brand, whether it's an influencer, celebrity, or just, an everyday person. It is so important to know who is saying what, and if an issue is going to arise, how you're going to handle that. I also think too, within the world of social media, and this connects back to like influencers in general, I also think too, influencer marketing is going to continue to rise and be the next normal, because people now, I think, feel that these influencers are so much more authentic, and people are getting tired of just, looking at advertisements. And I think from a brand perspective too, it's been the year of the pivot and being really, really agile. And I think all brand teams would agree with that. And I think in real time, we can work with creators and influencers to create really interesting content in a matter of minutes or hours that people can really connect with authentically.
Good, thank you.
To build on Kelly's comment there a second, I think what's kind of interesting to me when you asked
Yeah.
that is, Kelly kind of touched a little bit on crisis, but to me, it immediately jumps to conversation. So it's where you can engage authentically with consumers, because everyone's spending more time there. I mean, my mom's on social media, right? My daughter, like you name it, all of you, I bet. And so I think it's about how brands can be part of the conversation, and do it in ways that are authentic. So it doesn't come across as it's always an ad or it's always we're pushing our own product, but it is a fine line to walk and do it authentically.
Thank
I
you.
love that. Yeah, more connection. I love that.
Maureen, this question is from you, knowing that, you spent a good percentage of your time with the consumer. How has the consumer brand purchase intent changed during the last 18 months?
Oh, wow. That is that's a big question to answer. I mean, I think everything about the consumer, whether it's ourselves or we're thinking of, people that we're working with day to day, has changed. I think people are spending a lot more time online, as Kelly said, and Michelle, there's the social media element of it. People are just consuming media in different ways too. I think we saw that a lot in the pharma industry as we were looking at different trends. We noticed people were, during COVID, of course, I don't specifically work in infectious disease, and I never have, but I would be interested to in the future. But just the amount of searches that people were doing for different symptoms and things like that, it was just astronomical. So I think, to be able to understand, and particularly in the space that I work in with patients, when I think of consumers, I think of patients, because that's the space that I work in. And I think just understanding different phases of their journey and, different elements of if they're at a phase, for instance, with the patient before they're diagnosed, what kind of content do they need at a certain point? And then, after they're diagnosed, what kind of content do they need? And this really all circles back to, over the last 18 months, that has all changed. And we need to be able to reach consumers and patients in a way that we never have before. So that comes with tools like social media, and it comes with things that we might not even know are in our future. And I think that's what's crazy about this time.
Timmy, we talked about this to some extent. I think it's wildly dependent on category. I mean, I'm coming from frozen food where, the March of last year happened and, we couldn't keep the stuff in stock. We turned off all marketing levers because it's like, why are we generating demand? We can't supply it anyway. And so and frozen food has always played a certain role in people's homes, convenient households with kids, et cetera. But then it became perhaps a staple of life. I don't know if I can leave the house. I want something that's going to keep. I want something that's going to be able to be preserved. It's all of a sudden it became, truly providing in a really meaningful way because of the uncertainty of the world. And now I'm coming to a business where, we rely on people to move about the country and they couldn't. And now, so marketing becomes all the more important. And how do you position that, to Michelle's point, in a really authentic way without being hey guys, it's okay to travel, get out there and drive around. That's not an authentic message. And it's probably not a responsible one either. So I think it's wildly dependent on category and making sure that you are understanding not only the consumer perspective, but the sort of the macro trend of the time as well.
Cool.
That's interesting, Angelo. I would have thought that your supply chain has potentially slowed from an increase in demand maybe within it, because I was just this morning trying to order tires for my truck and they're back ordered 4 months.
I wish I could speak better to Goodyear, just because I'm like Kelly, I'm 2 weeks in, so I'm not a tire expert or an industry expert. I can also say it's probably how the business was managed. I mean, Nestle has always run lean. And so if you're not set up for growth, and this, you guys will understand this when you get into your careers, if your business, Starbucks, for instance, which Nestle's part of, was always set up for growth. They ran with 6%, 7% excess capacity. So they were built to grow. They were expecting to grow. Certain businesses were managed for profit and they ran lean. And so if you get an explosion of demand, you're I can't build a factory tomorrow. And I'm willing to bet, I don't know expertly, but I'm willing to bet Goodyear probably ran pretty lean. Factory's expensive, making tires expensive. So if you're running lean and you get an explosion of demand, that's not something you can do overnight. So these are where Where marketing is the leader of the business, which is a lot of businesses, the marketing hat's great, like making comms, innovation, all this, the sort of subsets of marketing, building those skills are really, really important. But being like a business leader is probably paramount as well. And so this is where maybe the balance of what you'll find out being a GM versus maybe like a marketing specialist.
Or it's a whole separate panel discussion we can have, whether you're a sales-driven company or a market-driven company. So I'm going to change the subject and go a little bit higher, and I'd like to have a couple people answer, but I'm going to start with Michelle. So, and being involved with many different verticals and companies, how do you develop a brand strategy?
Funny you should ask that. That's some of the work our team is doing on, particularly on some new products. Yeah, no, I think what's interesting when you think about brand strategy or anything with a brand, you have to start kind of what the heart of the brand is. Like what is the brand itself? What do you want people to walk away and remember? Some people might say it's more the 30-second elevator pitch, or, you know, some people even refer to it more as a tagline or something. But really the idea of brand and brand strategy is what do we want to be doing with that brand? Not only today, but really the future. And so I will say for us, a lot of the work that we're doing is, here's where we are today. We've had a brand that's, you know, in particular AccuWeather, but some of our newer brands that we're doing, it is thinking about how we're positioning that brand today. Where do we want that brand to go? And really, who's our audience and who's we're talking to? Because if it's not about your customer, it's not about who you want to talk to, it doesn't matter. So to me, a lot of the work that we're doing is focused on who's that customer, who's that audience, how can we make it be a better experience for them? And so when we think about brand strategy, it really is kind of focusing on that group.
James, you'd like to answer that question too?
Yeah. I mean, this is a fun one because there's a million ways to slice this one, to slice this potato. So when I've worked on developing or refining brands, the number one thing that I've always looked at first is like, okay, who am I? What makes me unique, and how can I position myself in the marketplace, and then who am I trying to reach? So when I'm developing a brand strategy, it's clearly defining who you are in an ownable way. Culture is moving a lot quicker. Your identity should not move as quick as a company. So even though culture is changing and things are happening all around you, you'll see some brands that look schizophrenic in the marketplace. They're over here one day, and then the next day they're over here, and they'll have a cause. And today we want to save the whales, and tomorrow we're talking about recycling. And like, there's brands that don't have some of the stick-to-itiveness. I think Adam will appreciate this. Is there's brands like Red Bull who kind of like know exactly who they are, and those are the brands that have an opportunity to build long-term equity. So it's like, who am I? Who am I trying to reach? And then what makes me unique? And that what makes you unique is incredible. That's where the hard work comes, because you can have several people that could be close by, that could be competitors, but you have competitive advantages, and being able to succinctly articulate what those are and then integrate those into your DNA is what makes you stand out in the marketplace. And then you can stand on that and continue to build on.
Thank you. Kelly, you've been on both sides, agency side, client side. So I think this question is something being on the agency side now we wrestle with. What's the difference between branding and marketing?
Oh, that's a good question. Branding to me, I think James touched on this, and as did Michelle. It's developing that identity, your story, what you stand for, what is in your DNA. And marketing then is how you bring that out to the audiences, how you then tell that story in a very authentic way. I'm bringing PR into this again, but it's something even like we wrestle with when it comes to marketing and earned media when we're trying to tell the brand story, is that a lot of times marketers get stuck in this idea of like jargon and using really technical terms to talk about the brand. But then when we take it one step further with consumers in an earned capacity, we also have to tell it in a very digestible way that people will understand. So yeah, branding to me is building and cementing the identity, what you stand for, and then marketing is telling the story and bringing that to life in different channels and ways that are going to really connect with different audience groups.
Good, thank you.
And Timmy, can I just build on that for a second too? I love what you said, Kelly, and especially in the pharmaceutical industry, as you can imagine, it's, very complex, science heavy topics. We're trying to basically disseminate clinical studies, maybe 10 or 15 of them if it's a long-term product, into something that a consumer can understand and then translate into, okay, that's what this brand is. It's not an easy job, I will tell you, but it's something I'm very passionate about, just, turning that information into something that patients can understand at their reading level, and then actually hopefully action on and, ask their doctor for more information. So I love what you said there.
Well, that kind of leads to my next question, which Maureen, it was for you specifically.
Okay.
Because it's kind of like ties in, right? What's a branding workshop? Sometimes we use the word immersion. What is that? What's the process? What are you trying to accomplish? What's the outcome? Who's involved?
Wow, I haven't been part of these in a while with COVID. But yeah, a branding workshop in the pharma space, the last one that I can remember in person, and then we've tried to do them virtually, not as effectively, of course, with my new company. But I would say, picking up on some of the elements that Michelle and James mentioned, it's really getting to the heart of who we are as a brand, who we're trying to be, how we're going to reach patients and support them. There's the workshop that I'm thinking of specifically. Ironically, it happened, I think, 2 weeks before COVID shut the world down last March or whenever that was. We had a huge workshop where we were focused. I was working on a product in the oncology space at the time. So for multiple myeloma patients, which is a cancer of the plasma cells. And we were focused on just thinking about how can we partner with patient advocacy groups and bring these patients important resources and help them to understand the new mechanism of action of the product. And the whole workshop, it was an entire day, I can remember, was just focused on really delving into what is that core message we're trying to get across, who are the partners that are involved, how are we going to achieve it. And the outcome was definitely a really positive one. We had a very great strategy with our patient advocacy group partners that year. So definitely not as easy to execute, I think, in this virtual environment. Hopefully they can resume as usual at some point, but definitely would be interested to hear, others from other industries, what their experience has been with this type of thing.
Anyone? Michelle, you want to jump on that?
I do. The thing that struck me, because I think the workshops really can be good, kind of fun. The one area I always love to kind of add on to them, and it kind of goes back to, I think James even mentioned it, is some of the white space area. Like where aren't your competitors participating? What are the areas like aren't being met by customers today? And Red Bull is a perfect example of, I really think, you could think about some drinks. No one had gone into kind of extreme sports. And I think you all, forged kind of a path that was right for you. Some of the work that we're working on now is actually more emotional based, very human based. And when you look at our competitors, and don't tell anyone outside this room, right? This is secret, Penn State code of silence, right? That's where we're kind of finding some different point of view, because when you're talking about the weather, it impacts you every day. Like you wake up and it affects your mood and everything. So we're going down a path that we think is also really kind of a different white space. So I love the concepts of sometimes taking a day, taking a moment, an hour, whatever you can spare on doing those branding workshops, because you've got to take a step back and really think about the brand differently and really take those comments you're hearing from partners and customers and other parts of your organizations to heart as you're bringing it to life.
Super. Adam, talk to me about challenging yourself, making yourself feel uncomfortable, right, in a decision that you've got to make regarding your brand, but knowing in your heart it's the right decision for growth or share of voice, share of market, but it's kind of uncomfortable because it's something new that maybe others on your team or other folks might not appreciate. Tell me how you get that journey across.
Well, first of all, I think it's really important to take risks in marketing, to make yourself uncomfortable personally, professionally, whatever it may be. And the first step a lot of times is getting buy-in. Maybe that's with your teammates, with the people that work for you or who you work for, your management. So I think the first thing is, how do you create this airtight idea that you can sell internally? Once you do that, then I always like to say, all right, it's game on. This is the time where the ball's in your court. this is where you can take everything that you know, everything that you've learned, put it towards this and take the risk. And really what's like, we're marketers. Now, maybe Maureen, you're in a little bit more of a serious situation with patients, but for most of us, Ulta Beauty or whatever we're doing, like it's not probably going to hurt the brand that bad. If anything, it has a lot of upside. So I think the growth is really, that's where growth really happens. When you put yourself in those uncomfortable situations, when you drive what's the status quo, what's always been done, and when you change it. I mean, you hear it all the time of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Like when we adapted our plans during the pandemic, that happened every single week. We continuously were adapting our adapted plans all throughout. And yeah, we took a few chances and some things didn't work. I've burned a lot of money on campaigns that never saw the light of day, but then there's been a couple that you've probably seen out there. So roundabout way of answering the question, Timmy. And while I'm talking, just really quick, previously, the difference between branding and marketing, I just wanted to share something real quick there.
Go for it.
I think that a simple way to look at them is branding is like ruthlessly consistent. Your brand is your brand. Marketing is adaptable, is flexible, is agile. You have to change how you market to consumers, your strategies as the world and technology and things change, but your brand has to stay consistent.
Kendall Jenner tried to solve race relations with a Pepsi and they're still around. Like, come on, like you can take risks. There's a lot of, we take ourselves, to your point, we take ourselves really seriously in our jobs. And like, you can take a lot of risk and not screw it up. Like, cause guess what? In the 24-hour media cycle, someone else is going to do something too. And like, there's, what's the alternative? Like to be mediocre? I'd rather swing for the fence and go down swinging a million times over than just to be average and like have forgettable work my entire career. So, I'm not advocating for solving racial relations with CPG products, but what I'm saying is like, I think there's a lot more upside to be had by taking risk and pushing for things that you think are correct, whether they are in the moment or is who's to say, but I think there's a lot to be said for taking significant risk and getting the data where you can and swinging for the fence because there's so much noise out there.
And I just want to just for folks some tangible advice. First of all, I was at Coca-Cola when Pepsi made that mistake, so it was hilarious to me. So I'll say that first.
Everyone gasped. It's not like it's good. They're still around. They're still
around. Way to
go.
So, just quick, a few things when you think about taking risks, and I've taken a few in my career. The first one is have a clear business case. So do your homework. So if you're going to take a risk, the onus is on you to first do the due diligence to create a clear business case on why you're doing it. And you owe that to the people around you. One of my favorite, one of my mentors would always say, James, I've made foolish decisions, but nobody can disagree with the logic that took me to get to those foolish decisions. So do your homework. The second one I would say is you have to believe. So there's something in marketers that's kind of innate inside us that we just believe. Once we have the idea, we put our creativity, we take the data, we put it together. There's this sense of belief of you of a leader in that idea, and that belief can be infectious. So you have a clear business case, and then you believe. And then this is a cheat code I've used in my career too, is the word pilot. It's a magic word. It's a word that takes all the fear out of a room. They're like, oh, what are you trying to do? Oh, this is just a pilot. I was like, we just want to test, and everyone wants to test and learn. That's another framework that I've used internally. As long as you do your homework, then you believe. Worst, you can throw the word pilot on it, and you can usually get it off the board.
Well, that kind of leads.
Pilot are good ones.
That kind of leads to my next question for Kelly. You talk about a pilot, which learn. Kelly, how do you use research to measure awareness, satisfaction, usage? When do you do that? Tell me about qualitative, quantitative. What's the purpose of it? Again, you're being up from both sides, and James just kind of made that intersection for you. So tell us about that a little bit, what you do.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack with research and insights. I think this whole panel would agree with that. I can speak a little bit about Ulta just because Ulta Beauty is such a insights-driven, research-driven company. So starting at like the forefront, even before we start to think about a campaign or a marketing effort, we go to a research team, and not all brands have this, not all agencies have this, but most do, where we can say, okay, what is happening in the marketplace? What are some macro trends, not even related to our business, that we should know about? And also too, we can influence some types of, qualitative and quantitative work we do to help influence some of those campaigns that we do want to put into market. So that's really at, before we do anything. And then after any sort of campaign, and even during, that's when we are doing testing and monitoring as well. So it is different types of marketing, I will say, and I think a lot of people know this already, have different KPIs that are set. So specific to PR, we are looking at impressions, share of voice, message pull through. If it's just a true paid media campaign, there are different KPIs that are set prior to, again, any sort of effort that is put into the market. But I think at a very, very high level, it is being very intentional and purposeful with the insights that you are using, and using them really smartly to shape your story and to really explain the why a brand is doing something and why they're showing up and a problem that they are trying to solve. I think a lot of times brands just do things to drive headlines or make an impact, and that's fine. But I think to have a true lasting impact, it is so important to lean in and to work with insights and research teams to really understand, okay, again, what solution, why are we here, and what are we doing for consumers? Because that, at the end of the day, that's when, you make a connection with people, and that's when they keep coming back for more. So a lot on research, but at a very high level, that's how I have always thought of it. And how I've used different teams and myself when it comes to measuring campaigns or setting them up.
Maureen, can you answer that question also? Because, in your industry, you're coming at it from, physicians, payers, consumers, patients, pharmacists, policy.
Yeah, so similar to Kelly, there is no shortage of research in the pharma space. It's actually crazy the amount of data that we have. And I think it was James that said in the beginning, apologies if it wasn't you, James, but I think that's part of our job as marketers, is really telling that story with data, because the amount of data that I have at my fingertips right now, I'm working on a brand that's over 10 years old. And then I'm working on another brand that's a launch brand as well. So working on both of those concurrently is a challenge in itself, but just using all of the market research that we have existing throughout the years for the mature brand, and then also the beginnings of the market research for the brand that's about to launch is certainly a challenge. But I think some of the best marketers that I've met in my career have been those that have had experience in the market research space, because I really think it just brings that science aspect to marketing. And I think when I was in undergrad, I didn't focus as much. In my head, I was like, how much are we going to use market research? I remember thinking that in one of my senior level classes. And the answer is you will use it a lot. You will use it every single day as a marketer. So, and sorry, Timmy, to circle back to something that I'm remembering from your question is, I think just considering all the different audiences, and I think Kelly touched on this too in her answer, but I think, in the pharma space, there's healthcare practitioners, there's patients, pharmacists, and you're just trying to encapsulate all this data and survey all of these individuals, and it all lends to that brand story that we keep coming back to. And, really, how are we going to better understand our audience and create content and an experience that's meaningful to them?
Thank you. Michelle, this is an interesting question. I've asked it before, and I always like to hear what the different answers are. If you had to name one thing, what would that one thing be that would make or break the equity of a brand?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to go with maybe my first reaction there, and maybe it's in regards to the brand I'm working on now, but I actually think it holds true for the others. I really kind of say communications, and I mean that across the broadest sense. That's internal communications to your team and employees. That's communications to your stakeholders, but it's also really communications outward on your brand. And I say that from like, and I think about now because, you know, being in AccuWeather, you know, I think Adam mentioned something like, listen, our purpose is about saving lives and protect property. Now, when it's sunny outside, I hope I'm not saving your life. I'm hoping you're enjoying it. That's why you're coming to us. But I also know if there's a storm, it's so important. And so the messaging and how we're getting it out there in the marketplace is really critical because, you know, am I batting down the hatches or I'm just getting on an umbrella, right? Those are very different. And I even think about when I was back on American Idol, because it was really about those nuances. Okay, we're bringing it out to the marketplace. We're bringing consumers. How could we make it come to life for them? What are we telling people about things? Like it was a different kind of excitement and point of view. But to me, that is a big heart. And so it came to my head. And so I'm going to stick with that one. But I think it's just something because it really relates to internal as well as external.
Adam, can you answer that question too?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I agree. I do agree with you, Michelle, on your answer. For me, the first thing that came to my mind is the people, the employees. I think if you start down a path of hiring people that don't believe in the product, they don't use the product, they don't enjoy the product, they don't enjoy the people that they're working with, the industry that they're working in, they're not going to be the most effective. And if you have a big organization with a lot of people like that, it could be a toxic culture, and that could spiral the company in a bad direction. So I think, I mean, I'm going to assume, but Kelly, do you use Ulta products?
Yep. And I
Right?
have been since I can remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and James, like you've been passionate about music since you were a DJ at Penn State and probably before that. Now you're working for LL Cool J. So I think it's so important that the employees and the people at the organization are fully bought in, love the product, use the product, and then they do their best work.
So I know we have like 13 minutes left, but I would like, I'm going to turn it a little bit because I think it's really important that our students hear what my question is going to be. And I'm going to start, Michelle, with you because you're just on my screen. What advice would you give these students that they're not going to learn from like Professor Copeland or Meg? What aren't they going to learn in class that we need to give advice to right now?
First of all, I love Jennifer and the classes and stuff that the whole team is teaching. So I have to tell you, I'm a little biased. I think the next big thing is get involved on campus. Try this stuff out. Like you are in the perfect environment. Like I don't care what you're interested in. It could be the Ultimate Frisbee Club. It could be the PR club here, Prime. Get involved and try stuff out. That's your best learning environment. So I'd say be active.
Angelo?
I love that answer. Honestly, like, and I thought about like being a career switcher and going back to grad school. And I'll never forget being in those classes with Meg and all the great professors at Smeal. And I remember being like, I couldn't wait to get into my career. And I was like, I'm going to do all these like pivot tables and I'm going to do all this like market segmentation. I got to Nestle, they taught me everything. They taught me everything like the way they do things, because like company culture wise, every company has like their perspective and their way of marketing, their way of segmenting and their way of targeting. And so it is not to minimize education at all, right? Like it's like sort of the foot in the door, but it's like to Michelle's point, like don't beat yourself up over grades. Don't beat yourself over like finals. That is the thing I wish I would have like known going in, because like I learned it all in the job. Like there wasn't anything that AB didn't take the time to teach me. There wasn't anything that Nestle didn't take the time to teach me. Even now, like 13 years in, there's plenty of things that Goodyear's taking the time to onboard me onto. So like, yeah, am I probably like speaking out of turn here a little bit? Yeah, but like that is the one thing that don't beat yourself up over those like late nights and stuff like that, because at the end of the day, when you fall in with a good organization, you're gonna have great mentors, you're gonna have great leaders, you're gonna have great managers. And if they are, they're gonna be willing to like teach you all the things that they've sort of been through the ropes on. So, and it's not to minimize education. I'm not telling everyone to drop out of school or do anything like that, but like, don't beat yourself up over those things that you might be stressing out over, you know, in your academic life.
James, can you answer that question?
Yeah, there's one of my mentors, this guy DC, would tell me, he said, James, you got to live in the one and then you got to think in the two. And this is some of the best advice I ever got. So what he meant by that, living in the one means this idea of wherever you're at, like work your ass off. Like go out there and get it. But you should always be thinking in the two. So by thinking in the two, saying like, no, you might get a job and you might be like, oh, this isn't necessarily a job for me. What if I make the wrong decision? What if I go in the wrong place? There's no such thing. That doesn't exist. It's funny. Someone said, well, your dad worked one job for 30 years. He's like, James, you're going to work 8 jobs in your career. Your kid's going to work 8 jobs at the same time. Okay. So like, there's going to be your path and your road is like where it starts is not going to be where it ends. So don't like get in, but like live in your one. So that's like, you'll get where you want to get, but make sure you're living in your one. You can outwork your competition. You can outwork people that went to an Ivy League school. That's like Penn State's much better. I'll tell you that firsthand. You can outwork all of your competition. You guys are being prepared with a great education. So I would say work hard, live in your one, but always be thinking about what's next and understanding if you don't love where you are, round it out, knock it out, and then you'll be on your path shortly.
Adam.
That's a tough one to follow up. I love that, James. I mean, I love all of them so far. I'm going to stick with, in a similar way of the way you're saying, live in the one. I'd say focus on incremental improvement. Like a lot of us want to be a lot better really quickly. That's hard to do, but it's probably possible in every facet of your work or your life to get 1% better at whatever it is you want to do. So I'd say focus on that, get 1% better, then get 1% better, then get 1% better. Next thing you know, you're 10, 20, 30, 40% better. You're a lot better over time. And it doesn't feel like as much of the grind or the effort to get there. Kind of like James Franklin, right? 1-0. That's all it's about. It's about being 1-0. It's not about being 10-0. It's about being 1-0. And if you're 1-0 consistently, you'll be 10-0 at the end.
Maureen?
Yeah, I love all the answers. It's hard to follow up on these. For me, it is about not underestimating the power of a strong network. I cannot believe the places my network has taken me from Penn State until now. And I saw this quote one time. It was something about how loose ties can really help make a difference in your personal and professional life. And what that means is, people that you might not even be that connected with, whether it's just a person you met at a conference once and then you're connected on LinkedIn, they might, share or like someone else's post about a job, and then that might come across your news feed on LinkedIn. That's actually what happened to me and my new job. And I've never looked back since. So I think just that power of networking is crazy. And I think another thing that I would say is just the power of culture. I think a couple other people hit on this as well. For a lot of people, myself included, it's not really the job and the title. It's more about the people that you're surrounding yourself with at work every day. And one of the main reasons I accepted the job that I did a couple months ago when I switched companies was because I actually knew the manager, loose ties, as I mentioned, and I just heard amazing things about her as a marketer. And I was like, I want to work for that person and be involved in whatever she's doing. So I think those are my 2 pieces of advice.
And let's finish it off with Kelly.
Well said all around. For me, I would say, and I mentioned this, Adam mentioned this, a couple of other folks did, be a lifelong learner long after you get through the curriculum. And that means like getting up every day. And this should never feel like you have to do it, because I would like to think you guys are all interested in branding and marketing and brands that you love. But get up, read the news, follow the brands that you love, see what they're doing, read the trades, like fully immerse yourself in this world. Because when you start going for interviews, or when you run into somebody on the street and you can eloquently speak about some of these things, that's really, really going to take you far. And when I say a lifelong learner too, that does not mean you don't have to go get your MBA, you don't have to get an advanced degree, but always put yourself in situations where you are constantly in the know and you constantly have a pulse on just like what's happening in the world within your industry and well beyond that too.
I have one more question. Hopefully everybody will get a chance to ask it. And this is a question that I always get when I'm up there or whatever. And that is, what could a career path look like within a company or an agency if you're starting working, forging a career in branding? What's the journey look like for a career? Michelle?
My gosh, I think it's unlimited. Like, I think it's what you want to make it. I started in a job where they had a training program. They actually moved you to different roles, and that's what interests me. So I went and did that. But if you worked with me today, you might be in, our integrated marketing team, which works directly with advertisers and agencies, or you might be in the PR team that's specifically, outside, or you might be working specifically in kind of branding and our brand team, but that would go with, what we're doing on our sites and our, as well as how we're launching new products. So I think you can take this in any direction that interests you.
Adam?
Yeah, I would say take whatever job you can, wherever it is that's somewhat interesting. You're not going to work there forever, probably not very long, but you'll learn. And that's super important. And drive the van, load up the stuff, set up the event, like do whatever they ask and don't complain about it, because at some point you'll be managing those people, or you'll be managing the people who manage those people, and you'll understand how it's all critical to bringing something to life in marketing. So yeah, take any opportunity you can right out of school.
James?
Can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
It is highly unlikely that you will get the brand marketing job of your dreams. So please think crazy about this, because mostly to get into, for instance, Adam's job or Angelo or any of you, like that's not how you start off. So feel free, as Adam point, take the job, load the truck, like just get out there. That's really step one. James, jump in.
Yeah. No, and this, is what I would say is like your journey and path is unique to you. There's no such thing as a wrong step. It's the step you're meant to take. I started out in nonprofit. I was making like 20 grand a year, which is like almost out of your parents' basement money, almost. All right, so but I was working in nonprofit, helping kids in crisis. I had studied marketing, but I had I wanted to give back to my community, so I decided to kind of and I was working in nonprofit. I eventually got into marketing and was able to have success, but you'd be surprised that every experience you have can help you with marketing. So when I'm working in nonprofit, like in kids in crisis, adults are in crisis all the time too. And if you know how to deal with kids, you can know how to deal with a room full of rowdy adults in meetings and different positions they'll be in. Then I was working, then I went in marketing, then I left marketing again to go back to education. And I worked at kid charter schools in Philadelphia. And I did that for some time, but then I went back to marketing again. Now, if you looked at my resume, like I cleaned it up a little bit, I'd look crazy. Like you were all over the place, but it was my path. And I found my path. And by following my path and my truth and where I believed I belonged, I ended up exactly where I needed to be.
Angelo?
I can't disagree with anything that's been said. I think the only thing I maybe would build is just what I was maybe myopic about early in my career was that marketing was exactly what I was exposed to as a consumer. It was like advertising, it was products, it was innovation. I think what I realized, at least in the CPG environment and even in what I'm in now, that marketing is often the future business leaders of the company. Like if you look at the presidents of Nestle, if you look at the presidents of Goodyear, they largely came from sales and marketing because that's the consumer hat. Like if you don't understand where the consumer is and where they're going, then how are you gonna lead a business? And so I think what to maybe build on what everyone's saying, but maybe just put a little spin on it is there might look like a role where you don't get to do the fun shit, make ads, but it might be more of a business leadership, a general manager type role. And that is something that I was myopic toward or about when I started my career. And so I'm more open to that GM, run something end to end, have a feel for everything versus, well, I really need to make ads, or I really need to be in an innovation role, or I need to have my product be on the shelf. I think that's where maybe just my tiny little spin on what everyone else has said to this point.
Okay. Maureen, then Kelly.
Sure, I'll try to make it quick because great points have been made. So yeah, for me, it just really comes back to starting anywhere and just starting somewhere. And I love what Kelly was saying earlier about being well-read and following your passions. Because for me, I have always been extremely passionate about the healthcare industry. since, even before college, I actually wanted to be pre-med initially. And I found my way into the pharma industry now, which isn't exactly the same, but, I think it's just, you don't know where the path will take you. And I think just starting in any job that's even remotely aligned sometimes to what you're interested in will just lead you down a path. And as I said earlier, just build those connections and that network, which I think is incredible. And I think just to even give a flavor of, what an early job in pharma could look like, I'm sure many other industries, if those on the line are similar. But a lot of it is starting in sales, honestly, kind of similar to what Adam said. You're kind of doing the dirty work, boots on the ground, carrying the bag, as they call it, in pharma. And I think that's really where you understand the customers, and you're really seeing what the environment is like that your consumers, your patients are in. So I think that's a really important piece of, any role. And I know, Timmy, we talked about sales and we didn't get to focus on it too much here. It could probably be a whole other panel, but those are just some of the thoughts that I had.
Yeah. Okay, and Kelly, wrap it up with your answer.
Yeah, don't be afraid to take a post-grad internship. Sometimes that's your foot in the door. And then I would say too, really quickly, when you are at a company and you may not be in a role you love, use your time there wisely to try out different things. I did this even when I was in, account management. I really wanted to start to get into PR. So I would shadow the PR team, or I would raise my hand to do some like pro bono work. So be really smart about where you are and opportunities to really stretch in your current role. That doesn't mean don't do your, day-to-day job really well, but really find those opportunities, because that's when you really get to essentially double dip and see what you love to do too.
Super. I took 2 minutes of the breakout room, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Copeland for a minute.
I just really wanted to quickly jump in. I know Toby is going to tell you a little bit about the breakouts. I wanted to say this was so inspirational. It's always amazing to me how this is our 6th annual event, and each one I am just so excited as it's happening, and so proud of how it always comes together. I thank the panelists for spending their valuable time with us. I know that this is beyond a textbook, and so inspirational for our students to learn your stories and to hear your perspectives. I love that all of the brands you work on touch our lives every day in different ways, and that just makes it inherently relatable. Timmy, this wouldn't happen without you. We have to thank you a lot for your support, for really developing this idea in the first place. Really appreciate that a lot. I want to thank the marketing department and Spill College of Business for supporting us as well. The audience members, who I know we can't see, but we hope you will join in the breakouts. We look forward to meeting you in those particular rooms. We hope you were inspired too. And then finally, I do have to thank Toby, Helena, the executive board of Penn State Prime and Ad PR Club, who really worked tirelessly behind the scenes. I have to say the number of emails exchanged with Julia Lowen and Megan Straley were sort of covering my inbox. And so I really appreciate the help of everyone and a lot of people who did sort of hidden things behind the scenes as well. So thank you.
Professor Copeland absolutely took the words out of my mouth, so I really can't do anything but echo that. But again, thank you to all that participated and all that took part in this event. Again, it's one of my very favorite ones, and I'm so grateful for everyone's time and fantastic insights. As for next steps, I sent it, anyone that signed up on the registration link should have received an email with all the links to the breakout rooms to the panelists. Panelists, I just sent you all another email with your own links to the breakout rooms as well. So everyone should be very easy and able to hop into the next step. Feel free to jump between breakout rooms, and for the next 25 minutes or so, ask any questions that you'd like with each of our panelists and get some more time with each of them. So again, thank you all for all of your time. And if the attendees are having any issues, feel free to drop a question in the Q&A box, and I'd be happy to make sure everyone gets situated where they need to be.
Thank you so much, everybody. This was amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. See you guys in the breakout rooms.
Yeah, we'll float
See you
around.
guys soon.
Bye.